What if scaling your company didn't mean hiring faster, but hiring smarter with AI? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on how Howdy.com cracked the code to $30 million in annual recurring revenue with a stunning 98% retention rate.
It was 2019. I happened to be in Colorado Springs and there was a US Treasury there and they had a wall of $30 million in cash on the wall. And I stood in front of it and I was like, take a picture. If our company hits 30 million, I'll post this picture. And so that had happened on Monday and I posted it on Monday.
All right, y'all. Howdy.com, one of our platinum sponsors of the event, to make this event possible. Make sure that you are subscribed to us on YouTube to stay up to date with all the latest from GenAI University. And in this conversation with Jacqueline and Frank, we're going to be talking about what Howdy is doing to help enable an AI-powered workforce. Jacqueline, Frank, great to see you guys here.
Thank you, Darby. Great to be here. Hi, everyone.
Good to see you. Good to see you guys. And I've got a number of questions I wanted to ask both Frank and Jacqueline about their company, because Howdy's doing a lot. They're growing fast and they are up to a lot of really cool things, especially when it comes to finding top talent, but also placing those top talent at companies. And AI is obviously a big part of the conversation. First question I have, Jacqueline, is for you, is that Howdy has been growing rapidly. What have been the biggest factors driving your expansion, and how has this growth impacted your business and your clients?
Hi, everyone. We're so happy to be here. Darby, thank you again for having us. And yeah, I'd love to tell you a little bit about it because I was reflecting on this journey recently. Howdy actually just passed the 30 million ARR mark. And I remember this number is like very vivid in my memory because when we were just starting out and we had barely any customers and we were barely making any money, it was 2019. I happened to be in Colorado Springs and there was a US Treasury there and they had a wall of $30 million in cash on the wall. And I stood in front of it and I was like, take a picture. If our company hits 30 million, I'll post this picture. And so that had happened on Monday and I posted it on Monday. So this like reflection of this journey is very recent. And I will say that something that surprises me now that I wouldn't have thought of in 2019 is how much we're still doing today, what we did in the very early days. And I think what people who are building companies don't realize is that so much of the sales, like 50% of the sales are still coming because Frank and I are prospecting. So much of what we're doing is still the stuff we had to do in the early days. So all of the things that you do in the early days of your company to make yourself successful is going to continue to make you successful. So if it works early on, it's going to work later on as well. And so this question about what's the biggest factor for driving the expansion is one of the things we did really early on was to make sure that we were a really great product, or we're actually a service, but to make sure we were a really great service for one company. Not to try and be like all things to all companies or to sell many things to many people or to sell like what we really wanted to do was just make sure that we nailed the one thing for one company. And it was such an amazing experience that if we were to give them an NPS, of course, they'd mark 10 because they were just like blown out of the water. And then we needed to make sure that like financially that we could scale it and that like operationally it could be linear. Because if it delights one person, and if it financially makes sense that we can scale it without losing money, in fact, we make money, and linearly, we can expand linearly to deliver the same amount, then as we're growing, we can create efficiencies. We can make things better. We can make more money. We can make more profit margin. We can squeeze things here and there. We can delight things in other ways. But what we really wanted to do was just like isolate it down to like literally N of one and just make sure that we were excellent for one. And then if you can do that, you can duplicate it. And so what is the biggest factor that's now driving our expansion is that we have been hyper-focused on one thing and being great at one thing. And now we just have time on our side because we're getting referrals from our customers. We're getting our name out there. We're still prospecting. We're still doing, like Frank and I are still doing sales calls. We're still meeting with different folks all the time. But now we have an entire team that's helping and duplicating these efforts in a way that it's not just us doing it. We have a massive team helping us with it. But get it right for one, and I promise you it will keep compounding. especially if you just like have enough time behind you.
Great insights, and congratulations on that milestone. That's huge.
Thank you.
Uh, Next question is for Frank. You know how AI tools are making developers more productive, but they're also creating challenges in oversight and quality control. So how is Howdy balancing AI-driven productivity with human expertise? And maybe a quick background about your role with Howdy gives more context to this question, Frank.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everybody. I am a co-founder and CTO of Howdy. My background, I'm based here in Austin. My background is in software engineering. I was a software engineer for the first half of my career, then a product manager, then eventually a founder. So I definitely come from a technical background and have been fascinated to watch how teams and engineers are deploying these new tools. Um, I guess the thing that really strikes me about these new tools and how developers and software engineering teams need to adapt to them is that these tools are capable of massively boosting developer productivity, but the trade-off is that it needs to be really balanced with quality and careful oversight, because it really um, excels at doing things like boilerplate code or repetitive patterns in code, performing large scale changes that would be pretty tedious for a person to do manually. So that means that a lot of the technical grunt work can be offloaded to these new AI tools. The problem, though, is that these AI tools have blind spots and they can get things wrong. Sometimes they don't understand the context. Sometimes they'll cheat. My favorite example is when a developer was telling me a story where they were trying to get the AI to develop test cases automatically. And eventually the test cases magically started to pass after they were trying to mess with them. And when they looked at more carefully at why the test cases were passing, it wasn't because they had fixed the bugs in the code. It was because the AI code generator realized that it was better to just change the test cases so that they pass more easily than it was to actually fix the bug and the code. So what this means is that in terms of balancing real software engineering practices, the old school basics of peer reviews, some human level testing, some collaboration and reviewing the code carefully. There's still a lot of that going on. And the way to really do it is to ensure that culturally the teams are strong with all those basic software engineering principles that lead to high quality software, and then strategically point these powerful productivity tools to the problems that are just boring for humans, that are grunt work for humans, and still at this moment leave the architectural, the taste, the judgment, still leave that in human control. Who knows how long that's going to be a requirement? Maybe in 5 years or 3 years, that will also be taken care of by AI. But for now, that's what we've noticed has been absolutely key for the software engineering teams that we help build with Howdy, is that the most successful ones have really struck that good balance of where to point the big cannon, but the stupid cannon of AI, and then where to keep the scalpel with a discerning human in the loop.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it brings me to the next question for how is Howdy actually integrating the AI into your own recruitment and management of that workforce, and maybe what are some efficiencies that you've seen doing this from the recruiting standpoint and your own workforce management to find the right talent that's actually going to be using these tools?
Yeah, the number one place where we're starting to apply these things in our day-to-day processes is to streamline talent recruitment and assessment and matching. So it's funny, when we started Howdy, one of the big things that we have to do is we have to vet talented people for their soft skills, for their technical skills, for their experience, and then somehow match them to the opportunity where they're going to succeed long term, because we want to provide great value to our partners in the United States. We have another customer, which is our teammates and our colleagues in Latin America. So both sides of that equation needs to really work. And at the beginning, we had so many amazing things that we wanted to do in terms of machine learning and data mining and all that stuff to really make that match automatic, mathematical, figure it out. We were thinking about like the OkCupid algorithm that solved love, and I remember a marketing term for them that like 80 or 90% of their couples didn't divorce after 5 or 10 years or something like that. They had some amazing sort of retention metric. There's just there. I don't think that there really was ever enough data to make this work, because you'd need thousands and thousands of data points, if not millions of data points, to make something actually with the traditional machine learning algorithms work. But what we've found in our operations is that if you have a bunch of opportunities and a bunch of CVs, then these large language models are actually really masters at evaluating and considering the match over soft skills and technical skills. So I'll give you an example. If a customer is looking for, let's say, an e-commerce engineer, what does an e-commerce engineer really mean? And if you have a recruiter and a technical vetter and a software engineer all in the pipeline trying to find an e-commerce engineer, that can lead to misses. But these AI systems are actually really good, especially if you kind of fine tune them and give them the right kind of data. They can tell you actually usually what they mean by an e-commerce engineer is experience with WordPress or PHP or Shopify or payment APIs and so on. And so these automated tools then help us be able to unpack that, find people that match those kinds of opportunities, and then crucially, also pick up on the soft skills that our partners are asking for. So they might be asking for somebody entrepreneurial, who's okay with chaos, and in the interview transcripts, these LLMs can actually pick up evidence for these kinds of behaviors, which makes a behavioral interview such a rich place for real data that an AI system can reason about. For us, that's just superhuman throughput, because we're still in places we still do this manually. We're really good at it, but we still make mistakes because we're human. But as we offload this more and more to large language models under our supervision of people who have experience doing this, we're finding that things are more consistent, things are much faster, the experience is better for our partners and for the teammates that agree to be hired on the Howdy.com platform. And we're seeing those kinds of productivity boosts. For example, it might take 45 minutes to get the CV, the transcripts and all that, and build a little synopsis for a partner to review and determine whether or not they want to interview this person, just have a chat with them. So that chat could be a 20-minute chat, and it might take an hour of reading through all those things, writing things. In the old world, our new systems can do this automatically, instantaneously, as soon as that data is available. So it's a drastic difference in productivity for us. And again, it's the kind of stuff that it takes some skill, but it's mostly grunt work to read a bunch of stuff and kind of collate it and put it together. An AI system is perfect for that, so long as you keep a human in the loop for the final product and the quality.
Yeah, the quality is so critical here. And you mentioned the retention of things, and the number that came up regarding retention when I was doing some research before this session was Howdy having an impressive 98% retention rate and a fully remote workforce, which I think is a very impressive number. Jacqueline, what's your secret to keeping employees engaged and committed for the long term?
Going back to when I was talking about how can this scale linearly, one of the things that we realized is it's going to sound so lame, but it's something that we always lose sight of. But every single person we bring onto the team is their own individual universe. They have their own families, they have their own obligations, they have their own trials and tribulations, they have their own like aspirations, inspirations. And so we wanted to build the company to be able to support the individual on a one person basis. So what kind of support did they need? What was the infrastructure they needed? Of course, yes, we pay them well, but we're not paying them exceedingly well. But if we give them great benefits, it's can we take care of the basis of the person first? We pay them well, we give them great benefits, but then now let's start moving up higher through the levels. Let's learn about this individual person and what does this individual person need? What are they aspiring to? And what we decided to do was we invented this thing. It's not like necessarily invented, but we built this like group of folks called engineering mentors, where these are people that were technical managers, technical leaders at companies before, and now they're more like on the just people development side. And they tend to have a higher EQ than, let's just say, maybe like someone who's just specifically trying to do output of a product. So these engineering mentors who used to be former engineering managers, they only get up to 20 people, and their whole job, literally their whole job, is focused on the 20 folks on their team. We actually adapted this from Y Combinator. When Frank and I went through Y Combinator, it was winter 2021. And what we realized, like what makes YC so successful is that every company gets what they call a group partner. A group partner is a former founder who did something substantial with their company in the past, whether it was like have a really sizable exit, whether they went public, maybe they've done it a few times. To be like a YC group partner is to be like a well-known founder of the past. And so it's someone that's walked in your shoes and done what you've done. And they only had a certain number of companies and founders that they would mentor. And so anytime like Frank and I would go to office hours with these group partners, it was as if they were solving all of our problems within 2-word sentences. And it was so nice to have that. And so I looked at Frank and I'm like, Frank, how can we create something similar for Howdy within the Howdy ecosystem? And so we really adapted this engineering mentor program after the Y Combinator group partnership program, where like their whole KPI is around developer retention and developer happiness. And so we're constantly measuring our EMPS around it. We're constantly measuring our retention around it. And the whole idea is, can we still continue as we grow and as we get bigger to treat every single individual person as like the individual universes that they are? I know that can be hard for companies where their product isn't people and what they're doing isn't people, because, oh man, that seems like it's like a heavy lift or it's heavy resources. But I can tell you, like, the institutional knowledge you save by investing in every single person that works with you in that way is tremendous. That even companies themselves can adapt this like similar philosophy. Imagine how much better everything would be for every company out there if one person, and it's not like a people manager role. It's like someone who has walked in their shoes and done what they've done. And I would say a lot of our secret sauce is attributed to this program that we adopted from YC.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to how much you care about nurturing and investing back in those that are spending their time and helping Howdy grow and reach the level of success that you guys are at now, but also what you're building towards. And we're talking about investing in humans and all the support and resources that you spend there. But I'm going to pass this from you back to Frank, because on that same note, I've also heard you guys talk about treating AI like a team member with onboarding, with training. What does that look like in practice? It's a machine, like it's not a human, but
Yeah.
how should companies from your perspective be approaching AI adoption and like treating an AI tool as its own team member?
Yeah, so this is something that we drill into the engineers that hop onto the Howdy platform, because we're always keeping them up to date, the latest tools, techniques, and procedures for interacting with these kinds of these emerging trends in technology. It essentially means that when you're starting to adopt AI tools in really in any kind of environment, but in particular a remote environment, you have to have the same emphasis on onboarding process and training that you would a person. And that sounds funny, but what we've seen is that many teams fall over when they just plug in a new AI tool, for example, Copilot, and they expect magic, especially management, right? Like, I got everybody Copilot, and for whatever reason, we're not shipping faster. People aren't using it as much. What's going on? We've seen this time and time again. You need to set up the right environment and context and guidance for adopting these kinds of AI tools. So some like concrete tips here and examples. The environment, so if you're talking about developers, maybe there's an analogy for your teams. But for developers, it means that that development environment needs to be set up and ready to go and mostly automated in the deployment code, right? So the deployment environment, the development environment needs to be set up in a way that's mostly automated, because if you need an AI system to contribute to it, all of that stuff, it needs to also set up the development environment, and it needs to be able to see your deployment scripts or your environment scripts, read them to understand, okay, the database is over here, the caching system's over here, and now it knows enough to actually contribute to your projects, right? So the same way that you would need that kind of on your first day, if you have all of those things set up correctly, on your first day, a developer joins, and at the click of a button, they have the environment ready to go. It's very similar for an AI system.
Hmm.
AI systems also need that environment to read, right? It also needs, or these systems also need all the documentation and the content. So if you're a developer and there's not a lot of documentation about how things are architected or how you do things on your team, and those things your developer just has to figure out over the course of months or weeks, then an AI system's going to go down rabbit holes. An AI system is not going to contribute the way that you need it to, right? Either automated test cases or refactoring or whatever. Your teammates can't even do it. And these systems are naturally language systems, so they need the language describing how your architecture works and stuff. Things like READMEs, things like Wikipedia articles or Confluence articles, requirements documents, all the things that you would feed to an intelligent senior engineer to get them productive in their first week. Well, guess what? You got to have that for an AI system too. And a lot of people just think it's black magic and it'll work, and unfortunately, it doesn't. And then they get lackluster results. Um, and then the last one that I'll mention is, I guess, the culture about the work is also super important. So if there if if there's a document describing this is our definition of done, our definition of done for the humans is that we have acceptance criteria, we have unit tests, we have integration tests, we have observability and metrics strategies or whatever it happens to be. And you have that written down and it's repeated over and over again. And the code and the architecture support all those things. Guess what? Those are the same sort of instructions and prompts that you can give, that you have to give to Cursor or Gemini or whatever model you happen to be using or whatever IDE
Hmm.
you're using, so that when it does generate code or touches files and this and that, it has that, it behaves in the same way. It won't do it without it. You have to be good about the software engineering and the culture in your prompting systems, in your documentation, so that the AI's generated code can pick up on those cues and generate things with that context.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what trends are you seeing now in terms of AI talent demand, and how are your clients going to be using these AI skilled engineers in their business? You just mentioned like the tool itself, you want to set it up and train, but there's also this new skill set of the AI powered software engineer. So what are you seeing in terms of trends for how businesses are hiring these types of individuals?
Yeah, the strongest trend that we're seeing is one hypothesis that Jacqueline and I had at the beginning of this is that we're going to see an explosion of maybe demand for specialized teammates that can fine-tune software in LLMs or deploy them and that's all they do. And we do see some of that, but actually what we've seen more and more in our pipeline is that people are looking for a regular old software engineer, let's say a Node backend developer, who not only can deploy software and features to customers, but now also knows how to use the AI tools, right? So we were expecting a bit of a divergence, and there's still room for specialization, but we started with back-end developers and front-end developers. And then over time, through necessity and efficiency, we saw the rise of the full stack developer that can switch between both. Maybe they're not an expert in either one, but they're that Swiss Army tool, that utility tool that you need on your belts to fix things as you go. We're seeing a demand for that, for backend engineers who just know how to interact with the latest APIs, the models, do some simple tuning, know how to integrate those things with the traditional database systems. Because what you find is a large language model is not a search engine. It's not a text search engine. So you need to know how to marry a text search engine, the traditional Elasticsearch and MySQL stuff, and augment it with the new language model stuff. And yeah, I was pretty surprised by that. So we're seeing it's not enough to just be a backend developer anymore. Now you need to be a backend developer who knows how to interact with those tools. The big hypothesis that we're seeing for when developers join at Howdy, we get them set up with internal curriculum, philosophies, and things like that to keep developers in the Latin American community up to date with the latest trends and so on for joining teams on the US side. Often our engineers are even more ahead of the curve than the US engineers. And one of the things that we hammer home is that if you're a backend developer, there's no getting around knowing how to use GitHub. That's where you collaborate, it's where you put your code, it's where you keep it safe. very, very similarly, there's no getting around knowing how to interact, tune, deploy, and improve these models. Like it's just going to be the bread and butter for any software engineer.
And so the companies that are going and looking for these types of roles to fill, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you're seeing when they're looking to hire out talent, whether it's in the US or Latin America or anywhere, hiring remote teams? How is Howdy helping them avoid these mistakes before they even happen?
Yeah. So the big mistakes I think that people get is the not really thinking through exactly how they want to use these AI tools, right? Thinking through a clear strategy for where they want to deploy them, the status of what their work is. So what we do to help companies think through this is I can speak from it from a like a software engineering point of view, right? So when they come on board, we have to know a little bit about their business, have to know a little bit about the kinds of objectives that they're trying to do if they're trying to deploy AI, the existence of their existing infrastructure and how that works, and make sure that it's clear to them that it's not, number one, they have to have all the things that we talked about, right? Like the right environments, the right context, the right documentation. Number two, it's got to be very clear the very specific problem that they want to use it to for. Oftentimes they come to us describing, we want to automate this whole workflow. But that's not enough to just say we want to automate this whole workflow. When you really unpack it, you figure out that like kind of the smallest piece there that provides a lot of value, the critical piece or the critical
Mhm.
path of that work flow. And oftentimes, like in our case, that ends up being like creating a synopsis for a software engineer. That is a critical piece among a bigger workflow. But if we tried to solve the whole, let's automate that whole workflow from the beginning without really thinking about where the value is and where the bottleneck is, then it would have been just this huge, expensive, clumsy system that's trying to reason about poor results that just never work. But because we're surgical about where it does apply, then with the knowledge about people's or teams' existing systems, we can then, through a little bit of a consulting and question
Mhm.
answering, we can actually recommend the kinds of software engineers, the kinds of skills that they might need. They may just need a backend engineer with AI experience, or you might need an actual like AI specialist. And those are all things that we can help teams reason through.
Yeah, and so Jacqueline, when you're looking at AI as a whole, do you see AI eventually replacing like certain roles in the workforce? Do you see that right now, or do you think it's always going to be something that's more augmentation for what's like human talent?
So I think it will be replacing certain roles. And I think it's going to be both. But let me give like an analogy for the way that I think about AI and what AI is going to be. AI is a very powerful tool, but this tool will take over a lot of roles. But I don't think it's going to minimize the number of jobs. In fact, I think it's going to create more demand for jobs. And if we look at history and if we see like whenever there's these great revolutions or these great things that have happened, like the Industrial Revolution or what have you, it creates like this compounding effect. An example, like in our more recent past that we can all think about is like when Microsoft Excel was invented, there was actually a lot of hysteria going on at the time, going, oh my gosh, there's going to be no need for bookkeepers anymore. There's going to be no need for accountants. There's going to be no need for basically people that did these like manual ledger processes. And in the past, before Excel, if you were really good at like doing quick math in your head, if you were really good about being very detail oriented, you tended to be a better bookkeeper, a better accountant. But now you're given this tool that's doing all of this stuff for you. And fast forward to today, to 2025, many decades after Excel first came to the scene, we have an accounting shortage. There is more demand for accountants now than ever before. There's a bookkeeping shortage. And the reason being is Excel is a tool that allowed us to do more. It allowed accountants to service more businesses. It allowed bookkeepers to do more. And so it changed their role and it changed what was important about their role. And so now all of a sudden, the people that could do quick math in their head, yeah, maybe that's like a useful tool, but what's a better tool is if you could be elevated to be more of like a strategic accountant to come through and think through different tax strategies. And so accountants, they had to upskill, they had to adapt, they had to learn how to use it. in a way that they became more in demand and more important with the companies that they helped and they service. And I see AI very similar. AI is a massively powerful tool. And Frank and I, when we look to the future, 5 years from now, 10, whatever, whenever that time is, where all of a sudden coding becomes obsolete, which like I do believe it will be. There will be a day where you can just talk to AI as if it is another developer, and there's inputs and there's outputs, and you'll be receiving. You will be able, anybody with like creativity can build the software of their dreams, which to me means that there's just going to be more creation, more companies, more jobs, more needs, but there still will be the need for software developers, but a different type of software developer, one that's going to be more of a strategic over, like we like to call them like mini CTOs, or someone who knows how to communicate really well with the AI coder. And it will augment, it will take away jobs, but it's just going to change jobs. It's going to change jobs for like how we see it today. Another great example of what it's doing right now, even for me, is if I had any kind of legal question or I had a question about contracts, I have to deal with MSAs all the time and people will bring things back to me all the time. And I really hate legal jargon. It like makes me very insecure because I feel like people are always trying to trick you or gotcha, right? And so where I used to have to pay my lawyer $700 an hour to answer simple questions just because I was nervous about the language, I can now run it through something like ChatGPT and be like, hey, explain this to me in simple terms. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to avoid? What are they trying to? And then I go to my lawyer, I'm still using my lawyer, and I say, hey, this is what this is saying. This is what they want. This is what we as a company want to achieve. And then my lawyer can do the thing that they're good at, which is defend our company, defend our contracts, defend our purpose, rather than having to spend all this time explaining things to me. So I at least am caught up to speed so that we can now have a conversation where we're on the same level. Where I see this going, and it's only going to go like there in a massive scale. But I see this from an exciting standpoint because it's going to give access for the ability for everyone to be creators. And that is just so awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting. And the themes I keep hearing coming up is it's moving faster and it's forcing the people that want to stay ahead of things to upskill. When scaling a business, there's often this tension between fast growth and then maintaining the quality, which I'm sure you've seen that in your own growing to the 30 million AR and with Howdy. How do you manage this and balance this at Howdy?
I think that if you feel like you are ready, like there was one time in our career, one time in the whole history of Howdy, where we were like, nope, like we are not offering this service to anyone. We did not like we didn't just to give some background, we needed to have an entity set up in a foreign country. We needed bank accounts set up in a foreign country. We had a bunch of just physical things we had to do first before I felt like ready and secure to be able to tell people I was doing this thing. But after that, like once we got all of the physical infrastructure in place and we were ready to take on more customers or more clients, as you call it, I think once you feel like you have some level of security for what it is that you're offering, don't ever inhibit fast growth. Like never, because the faster you get feedback, the faster you can iterate, the closer to the ideal product or service you're going to get without wasting a whole bunch of time. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait. I know I said nail it. Get everything that you know that you want to offer and get it out there and get feedback. And don't be afraid to ask people for feedback. Actually, we're still doing this to this day. Like Frank and I at the beginning of this week, we have some really good friends who are founders of pretty successful companies or CTOs at pretty successful companies that don't work with us. And we wanted to know why, not because we're like, you need to work with us, you have to work with us. It's just, hey, you trust us. Like we're good buddies. We hang out all the time. Like, why don't you use Howdy? And I told him, I was like, please just be real with us. Let us know. Why don't you use Howdy? And all the folks we talked, they gave us so much insightful information that a customer will not tell you. They'll just walk away or they just won't use it. But in the early days, when you're growing or you're moving fast, you have the opportunity to ask for that kind of feedback. And that feedback is so valuable for growth because they might say something like, you know what, you're awesome, everything's awesome, but your website just doesn't give me trust. I just don't trust you. Or I can't show this to the board. My board's going to laugh at me. Or who knows what it is that they'll say, but you'll notice a theme. And I talked to a bunch of different profiles. Frank talked to a bunch of different profiles, and they all had generally like two themes that they both said for why they didn't work with us. And it's actually a pretty simple problem to fix that we've never thought to fix before. And so get out there, go fast, break things. But if you're going to do it, you have to ask for feedback because that's where you get the true insights.
It's such a great insight from you both as founders who have gone through this and done the hard work of getting that feedback, which is probably uncomfortable for most, and asking for that direct feedback and what's wrong with my product, why aren't you using it? And it gives you a lot of ideas on what to fix, what got you here today, but what's next? What's next for Howdy? What are any big initiatives, innovations, or expansions that people should be watching for?
One of the things that we are trying to brace for is the AI revolution and coding becoming obsolete. So we're today already living in the future. So we have developed a ton of, it's like a two-part training module. And in this two-part training module, the first part is how do we teach our engineers how to build AI products, teaching them, for example, like how to build inference models or anything. If you needed an AI engineer, you don't have to hire a super expensive resource here in the United States. There are people all over the world. So that's the first one, just giving them the skills necessary to be considered an AI engineer. And then the second one is now how do we train them in building products without ever writing a single line of code? And that's a trickier one, and that's one that we're more excited about. But it's this idea that there will be a future where that happens, but there's going to be experts. There's going to be experts in terms of people being able to work with AI. And our goal is this year to have every single one of our engineers to be 5 times more productive than any other engineer like on a company team. And so we want people to walk away from like a review and be like, oh my gosh, Frank, like I'm telling you, your output is 5 times more than any other person that we're working with, which so it's like a very big, like crazy audacious goal. But next year for 2026, it's to be 10x more productive and 10x more efficient. So those are the two things that we're like really double downing on right now is upskilling our team to one, be able to be these types of AI engineers that are currently making like 500,000 to $1 million compensation packages with OpenAI and Apple and Google and the like. And then also basically making them the first generation of engineers who know how to build code without ever touching it.
Yeah, I think that skill set and that individual who is really a CTO in themselves and has that autonomy to be able to build is something you're going to see more and more, probably smaller, more lean companies being able to leverage this technology that much more effectively. And the great thing I think about a lot of these AI tools is that it democratizes who's able to use and code with them. You don't have to walk away from Harvard with an MBA or have this super technical background to learn how to use and implement these code or these tools. And you don't even really have to know how to code, but as you say, Frank, and tying it back to what makes a good software developer or a software engineer in the first place is how you break apart and understand the process and identify the really specific lever points that are going to make the greatest impact. This is an open question to either one of you. What is a question you wish more companies asked you before they even went about hiring a process? Is there any like questions that people just tend to skip over that you wish they would consider first before going and hiring a role, US based or not?
Answer quickly this one. One thing that I think people mistake how much they need in the early days. I think if you have a really good idea of what you're building and the product roadmap, like you can get away with hiring an IC, an individual contributor, and making it happen. A lot of times, especially non-technical founders, they come to us and they say, I need a CTO first. They're like, I need a CTO first before I can build my team, before I can build my product. And I don't think that's always right. Because if you are a founder and you're non-technical, but you have a very clear vision of what you want it to do, you probably need a product manager before. Just work with a product, hire a product manager that can help you build out do the discovery, do the system design, do the functional design, and then have the team build it. But I think too often they hang their like waiting to start on this idea that I need a technical co-founder. Now they might need a technical co-founder, but a lot of times when we're talking to people in the early days, like their vision is very clear and their desire is very clear. And so like now it's just time to execute. And so it's not so much a question that they should ask, but it's an excuse that they're giving themselves so they don't just get started.
Along those lines, sometimes we get, I'll talk to somebody who has this great idea for deploying AI within their organization. Let's say a good example is a lawyer that I spoke to recently who excels in Mexican immigration law. So he helps expats from all over the world become or purchase properties in Mexico, become residents or citizens, and so on. And he's got a very unique take on how to navigate Mexican immigration law and wanted something like a chatbot or a chat GPT to do it. And along those same lines that Jacqueline just brought up, although his vision was less clear, all he could express was, I want a chatbot that kind of replicates my answers and my interpretations of these laws for customers to help them. And I'm going to need to hire like a CTO and an engineering team to help me build out all these things. And believe me, like we're happy to staff a CTO and engineers for this team, but that's not really the way to go about this. So even though it doesn't really help Howdy, what we want to do is help people. And what I had to push back on is along the lines of what Jacqueline was saying is, before we get you a technical co-founder and a CTO, why don't we sit down with ChatGPT or whatever tool and actually feed it some of your interpretations? Here are the laws. Here's my interpretation. Let's give it some examples. Let's give it some use cases. And then let's write, as an exercise, let's write a system prompt that will help somebody with this, with just using ChatGPT for $20 a month, right? Why don't we start there and go through that exercise? And so I wish, I wish people were a little less scared of the technical aspect, I suppose. Some of this stuff with a little bit of thought and a little bit of strategy is actually very accessible to especially somebody like a lawyer who's good at logical thinking and getting to the heart of a matter. So that's, I'd love for people to feel more empowered that way. Sometimes it hurts me to see that the stuff that we're talking about here, just one person away next to me, it might be a complete intimidating black box for them that they feel like they need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to access, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
I think especially nowadays, in the
Mhm.
last 2 years, with how accessible this technology has gotten and how much
Yes.
the big companies spending the hundreds of millions of dollars in developing it is leading back to $20 a month subscriptions with more power
Yes, exactly.
to answer coding problems or figure out where there may be bottlenecks in your business. If only you understand how to open up the conversation and direct the AI to helping you solve these problems,
Yes.
which I
Mhm.
think if anyone watching this needs a word of encouragement for building anything technical, it's use ChatGPT, use Claude, use these
Yep.
tools that are readily available to us as your coding partner, as your pseudo technical co-founder that can help you understand code. Hey, it just asked me for an API for this. I don't know what that is. That's fine that you don't know, but it's on you now as the visionary to figure out how to answer the problem. And if you can leverage these tools with that type of interface, I think you'll find you'll get more and more comfortable as more of these technical problems come up. And then when the time does come, maybe, and this is my experience with Howdy, was our full-time hire and teammate is a badass uh, product manager, and he's able to see the whole thing and understand how all these systems work. He's able to articulate the vision that we have in the head and integrate it, but using all of these tools. And so instead of hiring three different individual roles, I'm enabling him with ChatGPT, with Claude, with
Yep.
Cursor, with Bolt, with GitHub, with all these resources that then it still takes time to learn and how to interact with them. That he is now easily 5x the employee that we started with, because we've been investing in training and developing, and it's so much more leverage than it would have been 3 or 4 years ago trying to hire for the same role. And that was one of the reasons why I'm so excited about how Howdy is growing and what you guys are able to do, because like you said, yeah, you want to grow Howdy, but you also want to help people grow and help businesses grow. And at the end of the day, we're in the business of helping and serving people
Yep.
solving a problem. So for those that are interested in connecting with Howdy, with connecting with you guys with any questions, if they have a role they want to fill or they don't even know where to start, but they're interested in hiring an AI-enabled teammate that can help them with maybe building and executing some of their ideas. We have a lot of entrepreneurs and visionaries that have a clear vision, but the execution still needs to be had. How can somebody connect with you? What's the best path to go to reaching out and connecting with you guys at Howdy?
So the easiest way is just going to howdy.com, or you can remember our personal emails. It's actually just the letter J or the letter, can you hear me? You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. It's just the letter J or just the letter F at howdy.com.
Perfect. And yeah, if you guys just let them know that you're coming from Gen AI University, let them know you found us through found them through the Scale
Yes.
with AI Summit. We've got a special deal for folks coming in. If you do make it to hiring someone through Howdy, just let them know that you found them through us, through Darby, and they'll take care of you. But it's been an absolute pleasure working with you guys over the past year. And that's just, it's crazy. It's been about a year since we started with our first hire, and there's so much more room for opportunity to grow, especially the more these AI tools grow. It makes our team that much more powerful. So for those that are interested in hiring some Latin American talent that can help you with executing these ideas and enhancing your own workforce and your own teams, reach out to Howdy, reach out to Jacqueline, reach out to Frank. And of course, make sure you're subscribed here to us at Gen AI University on YouTube so you get more updates to more content like this to helping you with scaling your business with AI. With all that said, that brings us to the very end of the 2025 Live Scale with AI Summit. Thank you so much, Jacqueline and Frank, for being a sponsor and making this event possible. Thank you for everyone that joined us live here inside of the community, inside of the live sessions, but also here watching these replays on top of our podcast and YouTube. Your engagement, your likes, your subscribes, your comments give us ideas that we're doing the right type of content or what kind of content you want to see next. Because as these tools continue to change and evolve, we're always looking for subscribers in our community. So with all that said, any final words, Frank or Jacqueline, before we sign off?
Just a big thank you for having us, inviting us to chat and share our experiences with the community. It is a pleasure, and please reach out if you all have any questions, especially from a software engineering or product development perspective.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Darby. Thank you. And also what you're doing with Gen AI University. It's a tremendous resource, especially for folks like me that don't have this background. I have the background in the sense of what we're working on, but I would consider myself very much like a non-technical person who has a strong affinity for technical things. And so the more I can learn and the more I can get my hands around it, the more empowered I feel too. So I just love what you're doing, and thank you for having us. And we love supporting you and what you guys are doing.
You bet.
I
And for
just
everybody
like to
else.
make
Oh, yep. Sorry, go ahead.
comments really quickly. Last year I was laid off, and I am super happy that as a hiring firm, you have embraced AI because last year, when I was going through different jobs and looking for work, I found that no one, I mean, they wanted to hire me, but then when I went to ask them questions about how they were going to use AI in their firm or how they were going to even start playing around with it was crickets. And I said, I'm really sorry, but I can't work for you.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I don't want to be working for Blockbuster um or Kodak at the end of the day. I want to work for Netflix or it's we have to embrace this. And so I'm completely thrilled that you have done so.
Thank you so much, and we totally agree, right? If an individual, regardless of their role, isn't thinking about how to deploy these things now, but in more importantly, I think how it changes the definition of their role and how it changes the medium by which they deliver value, then they're going to be left behind by the people who realize, oh, it's not the code part that delivered value. It was, I don't know, the problem solving part that delivered value. We totally agree.
Yeah, and out of this whole thing came out the fact that we always say necessity is the creator of all kinds of things. And so last year I actually built an app that helps people create resumes and cover letters in their voice with their actual experience so that it doesn't embellish, it doesn't go out of the
Wonderful.
boundaries. And that's my new business. So that's how that's happened. So I'm really grateful. I'm glad to hear that you guys are embraced it in such a way.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing, Tyrese. And thanks everyone else for being a part of this community. As always, we'll see you guys in the next episode on YouTube, inside the community. Make sure you're out there hiring through, whether it be Howdy or otherwise, that you're thinking through who you're hiring through, that you are investing in your people and you're investing the time it takes to adopt this technology, because there will be winners and losers from this. And I, for one, want to be on the winning side, as I hope everyone here does as well. So until next time, keep calm and AI on. We'll see you guys on the other side. Cheers, y'all.